recently, the State Board of Education gave a green light to the Bluebonnet Learning Curriculum. It's a TEA-approved elementary curriculum that opponents argue is overly biblically infused. Can you touch on the dangers of this, and also the incentive that school districts might have to go ahead and use this over other curriculums, especially in the situation we're in right now regarding funding?
Well, the curriculum definitely prioritizes and privileges Christianity as part of, our national heritage and social studies viewpoint, right? When we're looking at social studies for kids, that's really part of our fabric as a nation. And so they're kind of taking that run at it as they're trying to weave these biblical stories throughout this curriculum. They're putting things like the Good Samaritan and the Golden Rule, that sort of thing, into these lessons, which on their face, that is not a bad thing to teach kids, and can be very universal. The problem is it's not being taught, or wouldn't be taught, in a universal type fashion, that it would very much focus on that being a Christian teaching. And I think too, there are a lot of people, even Christians, who would not be comfortable sending their child to school to be taught a Bible lesson, right? That's not why you're going to public school. You send your kid to Sunday school, or you send your kid to, your synagogue, or whatever your faith tradition is. That's where you send your kids to have faith learning opportunities. And I think that's where most people feel comfortable with that. And so it is a slippery slope to, it really opens the door to potential proselytizing. And there's a lot of people who are really uncomfortable with that. And then the second part to your question is the incentive. And as Chris had touched on before, we know that schools have not had an increase in basic allotment, right? And we know that inflation has increased. Those are all true facts. But there is a $60 per student incentive that if a school district chooses, which they do have the choice of do they take on this curriculum or do they not, but they would gain $60 per student for choosing this curriculum. So there is a financial incentive to choose it. And when you are thinking about money-starved school districts that are currently looking at having to shut down campuses or cut services or cut, extracurricular type activities or whatever, that would be beneficial to them. And so that just seems like a recipe for some really bad things to potentially happen, and an absolute violation of the separation of church and state. And it puts, families of no faith or of different faith traditions in a very uncomfortable position. And so it just seems like a terrible idea for us.
And one of the things that you can't forget inside any of this is, you talk about TEA approving this curriculum. Who appoints the head of TEA? It's the governor. And TEA also approved charters, a religious charter this last go round for Hillsdale College. Which is, this school that very famously does not take federal funding, so that they have the ability to do exactly what they want with their private school. They've created a whole chain of charters, which has now been approved to come into Texas, and TEA and the State Board of Education approved them to come in. So not only do we have things like this Bluebonnet curriculum, but we also have a charter school system that is going to be blatantly religious, also approved to come in. So it's coming from all fronts, and it's connected very much to the Texas Education Agency, who is run by an Abbott appointee.
All connects. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.